Hey everybody, welcome back into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on a Wednesday evening. It is a Woody Wednesday on Snap Judgments on the podcast. That is Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham, and I am Austin Ward. Guess what? It's another day. There's more information to talk about with Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Let's just get it out of the way now, shall we?
Sure. What are we talking about?
Did not see Jaxon Smith-Njigba walking off the practice field tonight like we did last week. Now, the timing of that was structured a little bit differently than a week ago. But it does not appear, based on some of the feedback and information that we've gathered over the last 2 days, that there is good news to share with Jaxon Smith-Njigba's health. I don't know if I can call it a setback or not. The pitch count thing did seem to exist on Saturday, but we also had eyes that saw something maybe differently afterwards. I think that at some point Ohio State's going to have to probably clarify a little bit more of what's going on here, because it does seem to be trending the wrong direction. Maybe that's just my read on it, or the few people that have given me some indications on that. I'll let you guys weigh in on it. But when CJ Stroud says, I don't want to spill Jaxon Smith-Njigba's personal business, that's about the most revealing public comment he could possibly make about it. And it lines up more closely with what we're hearing privately, Berm.
Yeah, it seems like this is a situation where Jaxon has had a pretty frustrating last 2 months, and you don't know how much is too much for a young guy to take or to deal with when it's you're dealing with the present versus the future. I guess we're still in sort of wait and see mode to see what that means. But as you alluded to, last Wednesday, we saw him out here after practice catching balls on the jugs machine. This week we haven't seen him at all, and that is a disconcerting turn of events as far as what it means for him this Saturday and potentially beyond.
Yeah. I think all along what we've heard and what we've seen have not exactly lined up. At least what we've heard publicly and what we've seen have not exactly lined up. That kind of continues to be the case. I guess we'll see what happens, but I think I said on Tuesday that, maybe he'll play on Saturday, and I am less confident in that now.
We will probably get some more clarity on Thursday on the lightning round with Ryan Day, but I don't know that we're going to get a firm final answer on what all this means for a few more days, probably.
Yeah, I think that there's an element here where Ohio State doesn't want to, A, talk about injuries, B, give away strategic information to Penn State. And I understand all that part. But to say that the plan is proceeding the way that Ryan Day did on Tuesday, I'm not sure that I can fully buy that the way that I did 36 hours ago. I'm with Bill in that I'm saying the confidence that I have that Jaxon Smith-Njigba is going to play against Penn State has gone down. I am not reporting one way or another definitively what his plans are for Saturday or anything beyond that at this point. But we've talked about it all along. And we're just going to throw that out there in the interest of full disclosure that that's where it is right now. It's been a frustrating thing for me to cover. I'm sure a frustrating thing for Ohio State fans to follow who wanted to see the best receiver in America out there. And that's the reason that we've talked about it. But look, putting him back out there would just be a bonus at this point, because Ohio State has already built, again, the best offense in America without him, which would have been a crazy thing to say in August, but is now actually true.
It is true. This receiver versus defensive back matchup with Ohio State's against Penn State's defense remains all as enticing and intriguing as it would have been if Jaxon were available. That was a lot of the conversation with CJ Stroud. I think Julian Fleming got a good deal of that too. I think it's really fun. Like I know for Ohio State fans, maybe it might sound crazy to think that there's a secondary out there that can present a challenge to Ohio State's receivers. I am pretty sure it exists somewhere, and if it does exist, it probably exists in Happy Valley. So I think it's a really good test for the receivers. I think it's a great test for CJ Stroud. He was talking about, Penn State's really physical. They play the ball really well. They're really good at the line of scrimmage. It's going to require impeccable timing, anticipation out of him. So it's a good measuring stick for them, regardless of what you think of the Penn State program and James Franklin. I think that secondary is legit, and it's gonna mean something if Ohio State can throw the ball on them.
It goes back to something I said on Monday morning's podcast daily. Normally with the Ohio State receiving core, if you throw a 50-50 ball, it's more like a 90-10 ball, because Ohio State's receivers are so good with Penn State's defensive backs, I think it makes it more like a 60-40 type matchup. So you are going to have some of those plays that we have watched go the Ohio State way all year long not go the Ohio State way because these guys are pretty good. That being the case, it does not matter from a personnel perspective for Ohio State if Jaxon Smith-Njigba is there or not, because Marvin Harrison is becoming maybe the best receiver in the country. Emeka Egbuka is becoming maybe the best receiver in the country. Julian Fleming's playing the best football he's played in his time at Ohio State. Has a touchdown in 5 straight games. The Cade Stover continues to be a weapon that the Buckeyes are. Now that's a weapon I think this weekend we'll probably see a little bit more of than we did in the last couple weeks. So the Buckeyes will find a way. They will obviously, going into this game against Penn State, one of the things that people talked about is, hey, Penn State gave up 418 yards rushing to Michigan. Is that an area where the Buckeyes can expose some weaknesses? And I think that has to be the goal. You soften them up and then you attack the secondary.
Bill, what Donovan Jackson was asked both about the running game and about the stunt that he sort of missed assignment there for nothing else to really call that, I suppose. They allowed a free shot on C.J. Stroud that turned into an Iowa touchdown. What did you make of his assessment of his play and maybe the offensive line as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, he owned it, which is good to hear. He's a sophomore playing for the first time. Mistakes are going to happen. What he described, what happened on the sideline afterwards with, like, guys coming up to him and encouraging him and, like, tell him, like, just snap back, go play the next play. I thought that was good to hear. I think it's a group that's very much cohesive, that is still playing well. Like, they had a bad game running the ball, but, like, that doesn't all of a sudden mean they're not good. I think they're probably looking for a little bit of a bounce back this week. Penn State's defensive strength is not up front, so maybe it can come for them. They're not a tremendous pass rushing team. We saw them get housed in the run game against Michigan. I think that's out there for Ohio State too, but I don't think Donovan's lost any confidence, nor do I think he should. And I think that group kind of rallied around him in a way to make sure that one bad play was just one bad play, and he can bounce back this week.
Penn State's best pass rusher this season, I think, has been Damian Robinson, transfer from Maryland. He did not play last week against Minnesota. The expectation in Happy Valley is that he will play this week. So if you're looking for the one guy, but he's an outside guy. So, if there's any worry about confidence from the interior linemen and the guards, we talked about it on Wednesday's stock report. I don't think those guys are going to be quite as challenged. Penn State has a very good defensive tackle and P.J. Mustipher, but beyond that, it is an undersized group that is not going to present the same sort of challenge that Iowa did. So you should see confidence regained in that area. But, for Ohio State, this offense still goes as C.J. Stroud goes. And how Penn State attacks him will be very interesting to see, because they do have corners that you feel confident putting out on an island. But not a lot of teams can play Ohio State man-to-man and live to tell about it. And as, Manny Diaz's tendency is blitz, 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 leave your corners on an island. That is going to be an interesting matchup to watch.
It's going to put a lot on Luke Whippler's plate. We didn't talk to him tonight. And a lot on – they're the guys who have to communicate all that stuff. And when they're on the field, it's going to be pretty loud. So if it's a struggle maybe early on to figure that out, where the pressures are coming from, because they're going to blitz it. If Penn State blitzes 75% of the time in this game when Ohio State's passing, I won't be surprised. That's sort of what Manny Diaz does. They've seen teams break their tendencies and blitz a lot. I don't think they've seen anybody blitz as much as Penn State's going to.
That also puts a lot, as you mentioned earlier, both of you did, that on Cade Stover's plate, whether that means that he has to stay in to help pick up some blitz protections, or if Ohio State tries to use him to relieve some of that pressure as a pass catcher. We've seen both, and he's capable of doing either one. I think that makes him a really intriguing piece for this one, especially with what we're talking about. Ohio State wants to run the ball, so he's a key factor in that. Mitch Rossi would be too. Maybe G. Scott, who knows? But I think maybe this lines up where the tight ends become more important. Ohio State, it's not the year of the tight end. Sometimes it's just a week or two throughout the year where it becomes really important to them. Cade Stover, doesn't get to touch it every single week. And we saw, the hurdle and the excitement. I think that this is one that sometimes in these Penn State games, you see the tight ends, whether that was Marcus Baugh in the comeback or Jake Stoneburner in 2012 streaking down the field against Penn State. Tight ends, you guys have leaned on some history to say it's going to be close. Maybe tight ends are the ones that thrive here for Ohio State.
I actually like that prediction, because I remember in 2020, not the same thing because there was no crowd, but and it's a different defensive coordinator for Penn State now, but they were pressure heavy in that game, and Ohio State got a little bit out of leaking Jeremy Ruckert over the middle of the field kind of late. I think that's probably going to be available to them this week, and it could be a big day for Stover.
I agree.
Anything else did you learn?
No, I mean,
tonight?
I think that these Wednesday nights are kind of weird here because the collection of players we have is sometimes like representative of nothing.
It was a kind of a random selection.
You know, tonight. So America, here's how it goes. So we told you this before, but people have to request who we talk to on Wednesday nights, and we don't really have any control over that. So there's Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Caden Curry, neither of which figure to play a major role in Saturday's game against Penn State, which is somewhat peculiar since it's the most important game of the year to this point. You'd figure that maybe there'd be more requests for those guys who would be involved. But it's good.
I'd like to know who asked for Caden Curry this particular week.
But we've
been asking for him all year.
Yeah,
I think
everybody wanted to talk to him. Let's just do it this week.
We talked to Julian Fleming. He obviously knows what he's walking into back home against Penn State.
Would you call it a Lion's Den?
I would call it a Lion's Den.
Seems a little on the nose.
And he's looking forward to some good old-fashioned hate. I'm sure that will ramp him up a little bit, but you could tell he seemed a little dialed in. And as a kid who I wrote about last week, like everything just sort of is moving in the Julian Fleming direction right now. And I think you're looking for a guy to be a difference maker in this game when Penn State, regardless of if Jaxon Smith-Njigba plays or not, you can only cover so many guys with two guys. And that will leave at times someone like Julian Fleming open.
He's taking advantage of that, I'm told, in every single game this year with a touchdown.
Every game that he's played, he has scored a touchdown.
Yeah, that's a Berm stat. You're going to have to come up with a nickname for it because the people love it.
Yep. Mayor, I don't know. We'll figure it out.
That could have gone.
You got 3 days to figure it out.
Could have
we'll
gone
figure that
any direction.
Let's do a quickie here
Okay.
if we can.
A couple quickies?
You guys do on the Tuesday Daily, you do what we're going to ask Brian Day.
Yeah.
What are you going to ask Brian Day on the lightning round tomorrow?
Jaxon Smith-Njigba?
Just lobbing that softball.
Well, you can't both do it. So what else do you want to know?
I mean, we may have to, Bern, because the situation is not
doesn't feel normal.
what I thought it was.
This is just the way things evolve, however. We are in a new world.
Yeah.
And again, this was kind of what we talked about in like week 3. When you're dealing with a hamstring injury, you just don't know how long it takes to fully heal. And because the hamstring is so fickle, the more time you spend off of it or not building it, the rest of the leg gets a little bit tweaked.
Tweaked.
Or twerked. That's a different video.
Whatever you're into.
Yeah.
That's a totally different video. But I just wonder, like, if it's a situation where a family has said, hey, you know what, let's figure out what exactly we have to do here or what exactly the goal is. I don't personally believe that Jaxon Smith-Njigba is a guaranteed top 10 pick in the NFL draft. I think that has to be a discussion that NFL folks will have if we don't see him again on the field this year. But you can't be mad about it one way or the other, right? Like,
yeah,
it is.
Well, it's his decision,
yeah.
and I don't know what that's one has been made.
Yeah.
I know that over the previous 5 weeks or 6 weeks or 7 weeks that there had been one, which was do everything to get back. If the pitch count thing, and it was the very last one that he was supposed to get, wound up with a twerk, that's unfortunate, but it also changes the calculus moving forward. And so and the reason that I say, Bern, what else is there to ask? This team doesn't have a ton of things going on. It's not boring to watch them because there's something special that's really happening for the entire team, but it doesn't mean there's not a new storyline to lash into every single week. It has been
singularly topicked most of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a sign of the stability of this particular season, because that was very different than the one that we covered last year, where there were a myriad issues popping up every single week, some that you could talk about and some that you had to hint at, but it was bonkers around here. It's not that way.
It wasn't. We've been in such an extended period of weird that at this juncture, everything that happens is sort of figured that'd go at it. Figured that's how it goes. But you don't want to just presume it or assume it or try to put yourself in another person's position. But that's where we are now.
Okay. Well, what question do you want to ask?
I'm not going to ask one. I don't ask questions on Thursdays. There's I get to ask questions on 40-minute days. Otherwise, I'm just the guy in the back.
You can ask a question.
You're-
if you want to.
Every single person who uses the raise hand emoji gets called on for that.
Yeah, but the way that our setup is, you wouldn't be able to hear me ask the question on
Oh.
the video, and I think that's weird. So I just
Some people use 2 screens.
don't do
You
that.
can use me as a proxy. You can text me your question.
Maybe
ask
I'll
it
do that. But I
right
mean, the only thing I really am interested in is how Ohio State plans on attacking the Penn State defense, and I don't think they're going to tell us that.
Well, Berm, here's the game plan.
I don't think they're going to give us that
for asking.
information.
Yeah.
So
Be cool if they did.
My question would be sort of relegated to the trash heap because it would be given a coach speak answer, and no point in that. I think I want to know how much you watch Penn State play Michigan and say, okay, we can do that. That's what I'm interested in, is how much of that film matters to this team, because Penn State was pretty soft and bad against Michigan, but also the last time Ohio State played Michigan, they were pretty soft and bad. So is Michigan making teams soft and bad, or were those teams just soft and bad?
I mean, I don't think if you phrased it that way, you get an answer, but you can, if you ask how much of the Michigan film was relevant for Ohio State this week, I bet you might get a non-coach speak answer, something
Maybe.
close to it.
We'll see. Probably not. That's the end of this Snappy
Tune in
Jays.
later on to find out.
It's Woody Wednesday at the WAC.
That'll be Thursday at 12:50 p.m. Approximately. Starts pretty punctually. We'll see after the Ryan Day Coaches Show. A lot more content is always coming as we get ready for Ohio State at Penn State Saturday at noon. This has been Snappy Jays on a Woody Wednesday. That's Bill Berm. I'm Austin. We'll see you tomorrow morning.